Maybe they just don't love me. Or maybe I'm asking for too much. Or the most dangerous story of all, maybe if I just wait a little longer, they'll finally let me in. Because here's what I know, after decades of studying human behavior and the deepest architecture of the human heart, love is not the problem. Fear is. The person you're with, the one who pulls away when you get close, the one who goes silent when you need them most, the one who seems to build a wall. Every single time you try to tear one down, they are not broken. They are protected. And there is a profound difference between those two things. Somewhere in their story, long before you ever arrived, someone taught them that love was dangerous. Someone taught them that opening up meant getting hurt. A parent who wasn't there. A relationship that shattered them. A moment in childhood where they reached out and the world didn't reach back. And so they learned, if I don't need anyone, no one can destroy me. That is not a character flaw. That is a survival strategy. But here's the question you must ask yourself, and I need you to answer it honestly, because your life, your joy, and your future depend on this answer. Is this person growing? Not are they perfect. Not are they everything you dreamed of right now in this season, but are they moving? Because here's the truth about transformation. It doesn't happen in explosions. It happens in inches. It happens in the moment they say, I'm not good at this, but I'm trying. It happens in the small reach the text they sent when they normally go silent, the moment they stayed in the room instead of walking out, the night they let you see one crack in the wall they've spent a lifetime building. Those inches are everything. But, and I need you to hear this with every fiber of your being, you cannot want their healing more than they want it. You cannot carry two people's fear. You were not put on this earth to rescue someone who has not yet decided to rescue themselves. So how do you know if they're worth staying with? You look for three things. First, awareness. Do they know they do this? Because a person who cannot see their own pattern cannot change it. If they dismiss you when you bring up your pain, if they tell you you're too sensitive, if they make your needs the problem, that is not avoidance. That is denial. And you cannot build a life on denial. But if they say, I know I shut down, I know it hurts you, I don't fully understand why I do it yet, but I see it, that awareness is the seed of everything. You can grow a forest from that seed. Second, effort, not perfection, effort. Are they in therapy? Are they reading, learning, seeking to understand the architecture of their own fear? Are they having conversations with you that feel uncomfortable for them and having them anyway? Effort doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes effort looks like sitting with you in silence instead of running. Sometimes effort looks like showing up when every instinct in their body is screaming at them to disappear. Third, reciprocity. This is where so many people get it wrong. They confuse loving someone deeply with accepting an imbalanced dynamic indefinitely. These are not the same thing. You are allowed to love someone completely and still require that love to be returned. Not perfectly, but genuinely, consistently. Now, let me speak directly to you for a moment, not just to the relationship, but to your soul. Why are you here? Why does the avoidant attract you? Because I promise you, and this is not a judgment, this is liberation. There is something inside of you that chose this dynamic. Maybe you grew up feeling like love had to be earned. Maybe you were taught that you only deserve the love you can convince someone to give you. Maybe the chase feels like love because stillness feels too unfamiliar. You have work to do too. The greatest gift you can give this relationship is not more patience. It's not more sacrifice. It is your own wholeness. When you stop making someone else's emotional availability the condition of your peace, when you become so rooted in your own worth that you're no longer negotiating your needs away, everything shifts. Because here's the paradox of the avoidant. The more you chase, the further they retreat. The more you need, the more trapped they feel. But when you stand in your own fullness, when you are no longer desperate for their walls to come down often, the walls come down. Not because you manipulated them, but because you stopped making the relationship feel like a trap and started making it feel like a choice. And love, real love, must always be a choice. So let me bring this home. Here is how you know they are worth staying with. They are worth staying with if they are truly willing to look at themselves with honesty. They are worth staying with if they bring action to their intention, even when that action is imperfect and small. They are worth staying with if, in the middle of their fear, they still choose you, not always loudly, but consistently. And you are worth staying in this relationship if you are growing too. If you are becoming more you, not less. If this relationship is expanding your capacity for love, for patience, for self-knowledge, not shrinking your identity down to the size of someone else's wound. But if you have given everything your time, your growth, your vulnerability, and they are still standing still, if there is no movement, no effort, no awareness, then staying is not love. Staying is fear dressed up as devotion. You deserve a love that meets you, not halfway fully. A love that says, your needs matter, and I am doing the work to be someone who can hold them. The human heart was built for connection. Real, deep, terrifying, beautiful connection.
And
somewhere inside the person you love, underneath the protection, underneath the armor, they want that too. The question is whether they are brave enough to want it more than they want to feel safe. And the question for you is this: while you're waiting to find out, are you still becoming who you were meant to be? Because that is the only thing that is truly in your hands. Don't settle for someone who makes you feel like love has to hurt to be real. Don't shrink yourself to fit into someone's limited capacity. But don't give up on growth, on healing, on the possibility that two people choosing themselves fiercely, daily, humbly, can build something the world has rarely seen. You have the power to create an extraordinary relationship, but it starts with an extraordinary decision. The decision to see clearly, to love boldly, to demand growth from yourself and from them. Now go make that decision. Avoidance is not a personality trait someone is born with, it is a wound that was carved into them long before you ever entered their life. And the moment you truly understand this, everything changes. Not just how you see them, but how you respond to them, how you love them, and most importantly, how you stop taking their distance personally. Think about this. No child comes into the world guarded. No infant decides to protect their heart. Every single human being arrives here completely open, completely vulnerable. Make them feel safe. That is the natural state of a human soul connection. Reaching out, needing warmth, craving to be seen and held and told, you are safe here, you matter here, you are loved here. But life doesn't always deliver that message. For many people, far more than you might realize, the early experiences of love were inconsistent, painful, or simply absent. Maybe they had a parent who was emotionally unavailable, someone who was physically present but never truly there. Maybe they were raised in an environment where showing emotion was seen as weakness, where tears were met with silence or ridicule, where asking for comfort was somehow a burden on the people who were supposed to provide it freely. Maybe they loved someone deeply as a child and that person left through death, divorce, or simple disappearance, and their young mind drew the only conclusion it could make sense of. Love leads to loss. Closeness leads to pain. The safest place is inside myself. That conclusion formed in childhood becomes a blueprint. And we spend the rest of our lives unconsciously living inside that blueprint, making decisions, choosing partners, and responding to intimacy based on a map that was drawn when we were far too young to understand the territory. This is what avoidance is. It is not coldness. It is not selfishness. It is not an absence of love. It is a deeply intelligent adaptation to an unsafe emotional environment. The child who learned that needing people leads to disappointment became an adult who tries never to need anyone. The teenager who was humiliated for being vulnerable became the partner who deflects every deep conversation with humor or silence. The person who watched love be used as a weapon learned to keep love at arm's length, because at least from a distance, it cannot be weaponized against them again. When your avoidant pulls away from you, they are not rejecting you. They are responding to the terror that lives in their nervous system, the ancient primal alarm that says, danger, get out, protect yourself. Your closeness, as beautiful and genuine as it is, triggers something in them that has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their history. Now, does understanding this mean you accept mistreatment?
Absolutely not.
Does it mean you suppress your own needs indefinitely while waiting for someone to heal? But it means you stop fighting a ghost. Because when you argue with an avoidant about why they won't open up, you're not actually arguing with them, you're arguing with every experience that taught them opening up was dangerous. And that argument cannot be won through pressure. It can only be dissolved through consistent, patient, bounded love and through their own courageous decision to heal. The wound is real. The fear is real. But wounds, no matter how deep, are not permanent sentences. They are invitations to awareness, to healing, to the kind of love that finally teaches a terrified heart that safety is possible. That is the truth about avoidance. And that truth has the power to transform everything. Here is the most important shift you will ever make when loving someone who pulls away. Stop measuring them by who they are in their worst moment and start measuring them by the direction they are moving. Because who someone is today is not the question. The question, the only question that truly matters when you are deciding whether to stay or walk away, whether they are growing. This distinction will save you years of confusion. We live in a world that wants instant results. We want the breakthrough now, the transformation today, the fully healed partner who shows up completely open and emotionally available from this moment forward. And when that doesn't happen, when the person we love still stumbles, still retreats, still struggles with vulnerability, we interpret that as proof that change is impossible. We tell ourselves the story that people don't change, that what we see is what we get, that hoping for more is nothing but foolishness dressed up as faith. But that is not how human transformation works. That is not how healing happens. Growth in a wounded person is rarely dramatic. It does not announce itself with trumpets. It does not arrive in one powerful moment of sudden enlightenment where the walls come down and everything is healed. Real growth, the kind that actually lasts, the kind that rewires the nervous system and reshapes deeply held beliefs about love and safety, happens in increments so small you can almost miss them if you are not paying the right kind of attention. So what does growth actually look like in an avoidant partner? It looks like the conversation they stayed in when every instinct told them to shut down and walk away. It looks like the moment they said, I need some space right now, instead of just disappearing without a word, because that one sentence, as small as it seems, represents an enormous leap. They named their need instead of just acting it out. That is growth. It looks like the night they let you see them cry, or the afternoon they admitted they were scared, or the Sunday morning they reached for your hand first without waiting for you to reach for theirs. These are not small things. These are monumental things, wearing ordinary clothes. The question you must train yourself to ask is not, are they perfect yet? But rather, are they different than they were 6 months ago? Are the walls moving even an inch? Is the silence shorter than it used to be? Are the conversations going deeper than they once did? Is there a willingness, however imperfect, however inconsistent, to try? Because here is what the science of human behavior and the wisdom of every great teacher across history confirms: a person in motion tends to stay in motion. Someone who is genuinely committed to their growth, who has made even the smallest decision to understand themselves and do better, carries momentum. And momentum, when it is honored and encouraged rather than dismissed, compounds over time into something extraordinary. But you must also hold this truth simultaneously: movement must be real,
not performed.
not just enough to keep you from leaving. You have the right and the responsibility to distinguish between someone who is genuinely evolving and someone who is giving you just enough breadcrumbs of progress to sustain your hope without ever truly committing to
Change.
Growth has a feeling to it. It feels like honesty even when honesty is uncomfortable. It feels like accountability without defensiveness. It feels like someone leaning toward the discomfort of healing rather than away from it. Watch for the direction. Trust the direction. Because a person moving toward the light, however slowly, will eventually arrive there. This is the conversation most people are not ready to have. Not because it is too complicated, but because it is too close. Too personal. Too revealing about the story we have been telling ourselves about why we are in the dynamic we are in. But if you are serious about transformation, if you genuinely want to understand why your relationship feels the way it feels and how to change it at the root, then you have to be willing to look in the mirror.
Not at your partner.
At yourself. Because here is the truth that will either liberate you completely or make you deeply uncomfortable, probably both anxious and avoidant. Partners do not find each other by accident. They find each other because they are perfectly matched wounds. Two people shaped by different painful histories, unconsciously drawn together because something in each of them recognizes something in the other. Not consciously, not deliberately, but at the deepest level of human psychology, like two puzzle pieces that fit together, not because they are identical, but because their edges were carved by the same kind of pain. Think about this honestly. Why does the avoidant attract you? Why is it that the person who pulls away makes you lean in harder? Why does emotional unavailability feel like a challenge worth pursuing rather than a boundary worth respecting? For so many people who love avoidance, the answer lies in their own childhood. Maybe you grew up with a parent whose love was inconsistent, warm one day, distant the next, and your nervous system learned to equate love with uncertainty. Maybe you were raised in an environment where you had to earn affection, where love was conditional, where you had to perform or achieve or be a certain way to receive warmth. And so as an adult, love that comes easily feels suspicious. Love that is stable feels boring. But love that requires you to chase it, to prove yourself, to work for it, that feels real because it matches the emotional blueprint you were handed in childhood. This is not a flaw. This is not something to be ashamed of. This is simply a pattern, and patterns, once they are seen clearly, can be changed. But here is where your power lives. The moment you begin to do your own healing, the moment you start understanding your own triggers, your own fears, your own reasons for choosing unavailable partners, you stop being a passive participant in this dynamic and become an active creator of something new. You stop unconsciously pushing the avoidant further away with the anxious energy of someone who needs constant reassurance, and you start showing up as someone who is whole, grounded, secure within themselves. And that changes everything. Not because you have manipulated the situation, but because you have genuinely shifted it. The anxious avoidant dance requires two specific roles to keep spinning. When you step out of your role, when you no longer need their emotional availability to determine your sense of worth, the entire choreography of the relationship has to change. Your healing is not just good for you. It is the most powerful gift you can offer the relationship. This also means getting honest about what you are bringing into the dynamic. Are you communicating your needs clearly, or are you expecting them to read your mind and then feeling wounded when they cannot? Are you regulating your own emotions, or are you outsourcing your inner peace to someone who is still struggling to find their own? Are you loving them, or are you trying to fix them because those two things feel similar, but they operate in completely opposite directions? You are not just a victim of this dynamic. You are a co-creator of it. And that means you have far more power to transform it than you have ever been told. Let us talk about one of the most misunderstood concepts in the entire conversation around love, and that is the concept of boundaries. Because somewhere along the way, the world convinced a generation of loving, generous, big-hearted people that having standards in a relationship means you are being cold.
That requiring.
Reciprocity means you are being demanding. That knowing what you will and will not accept means you are being rigid. And so people, especially people who love deeply, who feel everything intensely, who genuinely believe in the potential of the person they are with, learn to silence their needs, to shrink their standards, to call their self-abandonment devotion, and their tolerance of mistreatment unconditional love. And I need you to hear this clearly, directly, and without any softening. That is not love. That is fear. Real love, genuine love, the kind of love that actually transforms two people and builds something lasting and extraordinary. That love has a spine.
It has dignity.
It requires something, not perfection, not constant emotional availability, not a partner who never struggles or never retreats, but it requires effort, awareness, and a basic fundamental reciprocity, the understanding that your needs matter too, that your heart is worth protecting too, that your heart is worth protecting too. Presence in this relationship is a gift that deserves to be honored, not taken for granted. Here is what happens when you love without boundaries. You teach the other person without ever intending to that your needs are negotiable, that your standards are flexible enough to be ignored, that no matter how much they withdraw, no matter how long they disappear, no matter how many times they leave you sitting with your pain while they retreat into their comfort, you will still be there, waiting, hoping, adjusting yourself to accommodate their limitations. And the tragic irony is that this does not make an avoidant feel more loved. It makes them feel less respect for the relationship. Not consciously, they would never say this and may not even recognize it. But at the subconscious level, human beings are wired to value what requires something of them. We protect what we had to earn. We cherish what we understand could be lost. When there are no boundaries, there is no perceived value. And a relationship with no perceived value from both sides is a relationship slowly dying while one person pretends it is thriving. So what does loving with boundaries actually look like in practice? It looks like saying, I love you completely and I need us to talk about this pattern because it is affecting me deeply.